Since you brought up states' rights, the final question before the closing argument, or closing statement, I shouldn't say argument, it sounds like a bunch of lawyers are here. The states' rights and subsidiarity are the topic for this last question. As a U.S. Senator representing the state of Indiana, what would you do to represent the best interests of our state, free us from undue federal burdens, and allow for greater state and local control?
I think we forgot to say who we were, and so on behalf of my colleagues, I'll apologize, okay? That's Richard Behney, that's Marlin Stutzman, I'm Don Bates Jr. First of all, education. Education is not a federal issue. That's a state issue. I'm much in favor of abolishing the Department of Education. Let's give that right back to the states. A lot of your local communities are struggling in this respect. I firmly believe that if we would give more control, first of all, No Child Left Behind was bad legislation. We forget Ted Kennedy wrote the bill. You know, how could it be good legislation? I think if we give more control back to local communities, it would give them a greater opportunity to do what they see as best for their communities. We need to allow more nonprofits to partner with our schools. I've had the privilege of being part of the mentor program, working with a young man who never knew his father and was getting in trouble, and they called me, go figure, and said, could you spend an hour a week with this young man? So therefore, education is the very first issue that I believe we can deal with to give local control back to the states. First of all, or secondly, health care. We can give more control. Now, I know Massachusetts has experimented with health care, and they've not done a very good job, but we can give more control back to the states. I think Mitch Daniels would do a phenomenal job helping us solve the healthcare crisis or healthcare problem that we face in the nation by giving us a model in the state of Indiana. He's already helped do that. So those are the two things where I would begin, by giving more rights back to the states.
As I stated, I'm a big believer in states' rights, and I think our Constitution, only 4,400 words, defines what our federal government is supposed to and not supposed to do. And I think that as we move forward as elected officials in Washington, it is very important for us to look at every piece of legislation and how it affects the states. I've seen it. I've been on the receiving end of a federal mandate that has come down to the state level and forced us, or had a carrot in it, to pass legislation. Just for example, we passed the seatbelt mandate in pickup trucks just a couple of years ago. Do you remember that? Well, do you know why we really did it? I mean, there's a lot of people that passed it or voted for it because they believed it's more important for the safety of each of us to have our seatbelts on, and I believe that. Personal responsibility tells me to put my seatbelt on. But for $16 million, our state government received from the federal government $16 million if we would pass seatbelt legislation. Now, so they're not going to tell you you have to do it, but they're going to hold money over your head to do it. And we need people who have experienced it here in Indiana and at the state level, and saying we don't need the federal government to tell us how to pass legislation here in the state of Indiana because of dollars. We need people in Washington who are going to respect that and understand it, that the federal government has its responsibilities, the state has their responsibilities, and the Constitution defines it and shows it at the state level as well, including education, health care. The federal government needs to get out of the state's business.
You know, you just hit my hot button here. You know, I'm a little G kind of guy. This is the call that I feel. I feel called to get the federal government off our backs, period. Our Constitution was very clear on who we are and what power they gave. The states gave the power to the federal government, and we must claim that. We don't need any more state sovereignty clauses written or papers drawn up. We just need to hold out our Constitution and claim our 10th Amendment rights, period. That's what we need to do. I believe that Hoosiers can take care of Hoosiers. Hoosiers can teach our children. Okay? Hoosiers can create our own energy. Hoosiers can take care of the sick in our state. Hoosiers can take care of Hoosiers. But we must be willing to stand up. And I feel called to go there, up to Capitol Hill, and to tell the federal government to get off our backs and to leave Hoosiers alone. If you're looking for someone to bring dollars back to Indiana, I'm not the guy. You'll have other guys that will be willing to play in that area. I'm not bringing $1 back. In the same token, I'm not going to allow some other state to have their hand in our pockets, taking our money and taking it back to their states. I want Hoosiers to keep our own dollars. Hoosiers can take care of Hoosiers. We must step up and claim our 10th Amendment rights.